Today on Bookmas, I'm holding Exponentially Elevate Your Leadership Impact by Dr. Stephanie Duguid. This book is a year-long guided journey for leaders who want to move from self-doubt into more confident, aligned, and meaningful leadership. Reflection, practical action is what Dr. Stephanie brings about. Readers can strengthen how they communicate, how they handle conflict, lead with emotional intelligence, and create impact in the rooms that they're responsible for shaping. Today, I have Dr. Stephanie Duguid here with me, and we are talking about her book, Exponentially Elevate Your Leadership Impact. Dr. Stephanie, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Summer. I'm just thrilled to be here with you today.
Very nice. Leadership, Dr. Stephanie, is one of those words we use all the time, but people
Yes.
experience it differently. Whoever the
Yes.
person they are, they experience it in somehow in how someone communicates, how decisions are made, how conflicts are handled, how safe people feel to speak, and whether the leader's
Hmm.
value matches their behavior or not. So your book,
Yes.
it treats leadership like a daily practice. That's what I love the best about this. So I want to start with your work. What does it mean to be a leadership cultural a leadership cultural strategist? And how is it different from traditional leadership development?
Oh, love that. So when you think about leadership development, most people
Mm,
assume it's theories and how to manage people and just task oriented and developing projects. So it's a
mm,
lot about policies, procedures, data points, and figuring out where a company is or where an organization is. And in my opinion,
mm.
leadership is so much more than just policies and procedures. It's about
Yeah.
the people.
Mm,
But when I talk about leadership, I am a leadership culture strategist, which
mm,
means I'm looking at the entire culture of your organization. Because most people, most managers, most leaders will never know their own culture because it's created by the employees based
yes.
on how that leader is responding to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to focus on intentional leadership or what I call conscious leadership.
Conscious
And so
leadership.
think
Mm,
about being conscious. You're alert, you're awake, you understand what's going on versus unconscious is just going through the motions.
mm,
So I like to focus on conscious leadership where you are
mm,
aware, where you are intentional, where you're value driven and you're
mm.
people forward. So that's how my work differs than the traditional leadership model.
So what I heard is a leader doesn't become a leader all by themselves in isolation, but they shape the culture around them, whether they're realizing it or not.
That's
Going with
right.
the flow wouldn't be leadership, is what I heard, right?
Yes. And when a lot of people get into leadership, they assume that they have this title.
Mm,
And I always say that leadership is not about a title. You don't have to have a title to be a leader. It's the way that
mm,
you interact with those around you is
mm,
what makes you the leader.
mm-hmm. The behavior they model, the other people model, becomes a part of the environment that you're working in. What inspired you to
Yes.
write this beautiful book? How does it connect it to your work with
Oh
leaders?
goodness. Yes. So I'll do a long story short.
Mm,
Is I had a mom who was awesome, and she was a single mom, but she was a teacher
mm,
for 40 years. And one of the things that she did in the 70s was she was a welcome wagon woman. And if the
mm,
listeners are not familiar with Welcome Wagon, that is the
mm.
person who welcomes new members to the community.
Into the
And she was
community.
the go-to person for anybody that had any questions about what was going on in our community. So she turned strangers into friends in the matter of minutes and kept them
Mm,
as lifelong friends for years.
mm,
And so I watched her. She was the model for that as a kid. And I thought that was just how you connected with people, how you communicated with people. And as I got older, as I went through my own career, I realized that that was a unique gift that she had, but I knew how to do it too.
mm.
And so as I went through my educational career, I'm a 30-year educator. I realized that whenever people turn into leadership, sometimes there's a button that shifts
Yeah.
and they become very masculine or very aggressive or sometimes even abrasive. We use that
Mm,
loosely.
mhm,
But what happens is think about education because that's my forte, that's my background. For teachers, 90% are teachers and 10 or 90% are women and 10% are men. But if you look at administration, it's usually flipped. 90%
yeah.
are men, 10% are women. Well,
Mhm,
a lot of that is, the way that we communicate, the way that we interact, the way that we have conversations. And so I
mm,
found myself guiding a lot of women into leadership roles to help
mm,
them through imposter syndrome and self-confidence and, being sure of who they were in their own shoes and not
mm,
trying to morph into something else. So this really became, it's the leadership dance is the framework. So it was really a leadership dance that I learned from my mother so long ago. I ended up losing her when I was 27 to a car accident.
That
And
was
when I
so
lost
early.
her,
Mm,
yes, and it was just before 9/11. And my way of coping with her is that I said that she had to be the welcome wagon lady in heaven, welcoming all the people who lost
mm.
their lives during 9/11. But I thought that she was such an incredible person that would do these things and mentor people that when she was gone, I said, I need to continue her legacy. And so I developed this program and continued on. And that's where the book came from.
This book.
Yes.
Beautiful. And several times you talked about communication and conflict and
Yes.
alignment. So,
Yes.
why are these three areas very crucial to leadership today?
Well, communication is everywhere, whether you realize it or not. A lot of
Yeah.
people assume that communication is very simple. They say, I'm speaking, you're listening, we're communicating.
Yeah.
But there's so much more than that. There
Mm,
are ways that we communicate. There's a communication model. There are communication personalities. There's, our voice, there's the
mm.
words, there's, hand motions, body language, tone,
Facial
intonation. It is
expressions.
all part of it. Yes.
Mm,
And a lot of that gets lost, especially with technology. And we assume that whenever we share something that people automatically get it.
mm.
But what most people don't realize is your perspectives, your
Yeah.
experiences, your
Mm,
emotional intelligence, and all of your environment really affects whether you understand or interpret the message the same way somebody else is sharing.
mm,
And so I always say that a message is a vase, it's a glass vase. And I want to convey my message to you in
mm,
such a way that the glass vase does not get broken so that you understand my message and I don't let it go until you fully grasp it. We don't necessarily communicate like that anymore, and we should.
mm, mm,
But with digitization, with texting and email and all these other pieces where you don't get the whole person, you're missing out on a lot of the message. And so that's why communication is so important because without it,
mm.
you are not getting the true message and then you're not following the plan of action because it's not understood.
Yeah.
Now, when you talk about conflict, there's going to be conflict everywhere. And a lot of
Absolutely.
times because of miscommunication. That's why
Mm,
communication is so important. But when it's not just miscommunication and you have to have conflict resolution, I always say it's conflict resolution with grace. Because a lot of times when you come into a conflicted situation, there's a lot of tugging and pulling, and there's a
mhm,
lot of emotion that's in it. So
mm,
I share different ways and opportunities that you can have a conversation with grace so that you're seeking understanding. And a lot of
mm,
times when you do that, the message becomes clearer and the
mm,
conflict is resolved.
mhm,
But whether it is or not, there's a certain way to come across it so that it's not emotional, but it's more about the situation.
mm. So communication, conflict, and alignment, they show up when people are under pressure, when decisions become,
Yes.
crazy, like
Yes.
messy. And when the leader has to
Yes.
choose between comfort and clarity,
Mhm.
there'll be more conflict.
So whenever we talk about conscious leadership, all of this is
Mm,
part of an engine. I call it a leadership engine, is that you got
yes.
clarity, communication,
Mm,
consistency, connection. All of those things are part of it. And yes, if you're not clear, if you're not communicating the message adequately and there's not questions going back, you're not consistent in the way that you respond to people, then you're not going to have the connection you need in order
yeah.
to build those relationships and have that psychological safety moving forward.
Practically looking, you say leadership is experienced through communication. So, what does
Yes.
that look like in a real organization or in a team?
Oh, so as an example, you almost need to over communicate because if you think you're communicating enough, you're probably not.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, you have that picture in your mind of what you're
Mm,
communicating. For example, I grew up in Houston, Texas, massive city, lots of cars, big freeways. I
mm,
now live in a town of less than 2,000 people. We have one four-way stop in my town. So when somebody says in my small town, oh my gosh, can you believe the traffic today?
mm,
They think that there's three cars at the stop sign, maybe a cow or a tractor in the road. I'm thinking I-10 and Beltway 8 in Houston, Texas, that's 27 lanes across, bumper to bumper, because our perspectives are different.
yeah.
So as we're communicating, we're sharing what is going on in our mind, but it doesn't
Mm,
mean the person receiving it is seeing the same picture.
mm,
So if you think you're communicating enough, you're probably not, but I encourage you ask questions. Ask for clarity, ask for understanding, ask if there needs to be any more input. It takes a few
absolutely.
extra moments,
Mm,
but that clarity and that additional push will really make a difference in everything you do. So leadership is, for example, if I have somebody new coming into my institution, I would make sure that they were welcome, maybe a quick handwritten note. Of course, they
Mm,
need the policies and procedures, but I also give them an opportunity to reach out to me one on one and say, hey, can I clarify anything for you?
mm,
Do I need to help you understand or interpret anything based on your
mm,
previous position? Just so
mm.
that there is open lines of communication. If
Yeah.
there's an email, I always would write my email and then I would read it out loud as if I were reading it. And
Mm.
sometimes when you read it out loud before you send it, you go, "Ooh, that just doesn't sound right. I need a comma there because it changes the whole message."
Hmm.
So if you think about some of those sentences, so it's making sure that you have, that clear message even in a text or in an
Yeah.
email, but it's
Hmm.
also being consistent. It's also being
Beautiful.
consistent. Yes.
Hmm. People don't experience leadership through someone else's private intentions, the leader's private intentions. They
Right.
experience it through words and tone, timing, the way they're listening, following
Yes.
through, and sometimes something happens or it gets avoided. And
Yes.
that's I think when conflicts become inevitable. So
Absolutely. Yes.
some leaders avoid conflict altogether.
Yeah.
I can't handle conflicts. So what does it look like to handle conflict with grace instead of avoiding and trying to control everything?
I love this question because when you handle something with grace, it means that you are looking at the individual first as an individual and you're bringing empathy into the situation.
Mm,
So, for instance, I always talk about responding versus reacting. So, if
yeah.
somebody comes to you and there's a situation and it's a surprise and maybe it's a bad surprise, some leaders will go, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. What were you
Mm,
thinking?" Whereas somebody who is responding might go, "Is everyone okay?
yeah.
Now,
Mm,
what was the situation?
mm,
What could have gone differently? How can
mm,
we move forward from here?" So there's one
mm,
that is like an explosion that makes the situation worse. And there's one that's really, all right, let's look at the person first and make sure everything is okay before we move forward. And we'll
mm,
handle whatever that situation is moving forward. So
mm,
that is one way. Then, if we have consistency, meaning when you come to me, you know exactly what you're going to get every single time. I might have a response for you. I might have to pause and think about it. I might need to come back to you later. But you're not going to come in my office and I'm going to blow up at you every time or roll my eyes
oh,
at you because I don't like what you're doing. So
mm,
it's being that consistent leader is another piece of it. But I also
mm,
have conversation starters.
mm,
So if there's a situation that's going on and it's uncomfortable, you might say, "Well, help me understand a little bit more about that." Or, "I'm hearing this. Is that accurate?" It's
mm.
asking for more feedback, but doing it. Notice my voice was calm.
Yes.
I didn't say, "Tell me, I understand why you did it that way." So your tone makes a difference as well. So all of those
Yeah.
things
Mm.
really affect the situation and if it's going to escalate to something negative or if it's going to de-escalate to something positive.
I think so many people need to hear this. I think I needed to hear this today because avoiding conflicts does not make it disappear. It usually
No,
makes
it
it
makes it
go
worse.
underground. Yeah, it makes it go underground and shows up later as resentment or silence or confusion. People
It
quietly checking out
does.
and you wouldn't know what's going on. What's one
Well,
simple shift a leader can make?
oh my gosh, one simple shift is actually, can I say two? So when you're talking about conflict and not addressing it, whenever there is a gap in communication, something negative is going to fill it. So if
Right.
there's a conflict, the longer you take, the more negative it becomes.
Mm,
And so I encourage you address it as soon as possible. Address it as soon as possible so that it doesn't go beyond what it needs to go. Now,
mm,
if I had to give one specific recommendation is to pause.
mm,
So whenever there's a situation, before you let your emotions happen, is to pause.
mm,
Because what happens is with our five senses, sights, touch, smell, all of those things, it comes up through our brain and it goes through the emotional piece first before it
mm,
goes to the logical analytical piece. So that's why we're so emotional when things happen before we can think through a solution. So if
mm,
nothing else comes out of this, take time to pause, understand what's going on with the situation and your emotions before you respond.
mm. This is super practical because difficult
Yes. And simple.
conversations and simple. Difficult conversations take care of themselves when we be who we are, who we should be when we enter the room. So
Yes.
a leader who enters a room grounded, calm, composed will probably create a different conversation than a leader who enters like defensive and rushed and trying to win the situation.
Yes, and that creates your culture as well, because that's
Mm,
a newer space that I'm stepping into is working on culture. And
mm,
so as the leader, you really create that type of culture whenever
mm,
you go into those different spaces. And culture is everything. So you talk about somebody that might be scared to have a conversation. Fear is simply the unknown. It's being fearful or scared or afraid of something that hasn't even happened. So why
mm,
not address it now
mm.
before it becomes something big? You might have a little bit of anxiousness, but it's better to take care of it now
When
before
it's
it festers,
small,
creates
yeah.
that negative culture, and turns into something else. And one of the best things that a leader can do, and this is something that I highly recommend, is get out of your
Mm.
office, walk
Get out of
around
your office, walk around, yeah,
with
get some
without an
sunshine.
agenda. Yeah,
Mm,
without an
mm,
agenda. And you'll find out how your culture is right then or what kind of leader you are. Because if you walk into a space and everybody's like, shh, she's here, then you know something's going on. But if you walk into a space
uh-huh.
and go, hey, Dr. Dugan, how are you? What's going on? Anything that we can help you with today? But I have no agenda. You
Mm,
know that your culture is doing pretty well and they're comfortable with you and there's not anything underlying. So just get out of
mm,
your office without that agenda.
I want to be that second kind of leader.
Yes.
And somehow through your book and through talking to you, it's helping me become a little more better at every time I talk to you. So
Well, I
the
love that.
one thing I loved about your book, the first thing I noticed, it is structured as a year-long journey, 365 days.
Yes.
So
Yes.
once people get this book and read through it and start following through, what kind of transformation can someone expect if they stay consistent with it?
Yes. And so it is written as a 52-week journal.
Hmm,
And there are quotes, there are scripts, there are activities, there are challenges. And so all of those are outlined, and there's one different thing that you do each month. And then once you finish the 9-step process, which is about 9 months, the last 3 months are helping you to implement to sustain those practices.
maintain.
So, yes. And so, as you go through this, it really starts with reflection. And you
Hmm,
mentioned that in the introduction that a lot of people think of reflection as something you do only when something's gone wrong.
hmm,
But I encourage you to reflect along the way, reflect during the
hmm,
day, keep a leadership journal, what went well, what didn't go so well, so that you can make adjustments moving forward. But as you go through this, this is about you transforming personally. I'm not telling you what to do, I'm not
yeah.
giving you certain theories. I am
Hmm,
guiding you so that you are becoming an authentically positive leader that is truly you. One of the
hmm.
best pieces of advice I ever received from an educational leader was to wear your own shoes. When you
Where
get
you
in a
what?
leadership position, wear your own shoes. Don't try to
Hmm,
step into anybody else's shoes. Don't emulate the previous leader. Don't be like this
hmm,
leader over here. Don't try to
hmm,
put these boots on over here. Wear your own shoes because that's when
hmm,
you're going to be truly authentic and people will know you're there for the
hmm,
right reasons.
hmm,
So as you go through this, the first section is about reflection. So
hmm,
learning, are you a selfish or are you a selfless leader? Of course,
hmm,
looking at your vision and your purpose and going through those activities. And then as you get into the second piece, which is to strengthen, you're looking
hmm,
to see what is your foundation. Do you have a strong foundation so that when you have pressure of your job, of what you're doing, that you can stand firm on your foundational ethics and you know that you are who you are and you can continue to move forward? It's
hmm,
also about maintaining that self-care. That's something that I didn't do very well in the leadership position. But a
hmm,
lot of times as a leader, we care for everybody else and we take care
hmm,
of our work, but we don't always
hmm,
care for ourselves. So there's little ideas about what you can do for that self-care. And then of
hmm,
course, communication is that huge foundation. And then the last three where you elevate is looking at
hmm,
conflict resolution with grace, how you work successfully in teams, and then what you can do to empower those around you. Because it's not just about me. If I'm a selfless leader, I'm trying to not only elevate what I do to support others, but I want to elevate those around me as well. So all of that is
hmm.
found in this book.
Powerful, powerful. It is. And I think this is one book I'm going to read 3 or 4 or 5 times in a year because sometimes there are books that I have put aside where I just go open a page and I find the right message for the day. And this happened to me a couple of times with this book as well. Nobody ever takes a leadership course for like 30 minutes and then voila, I'm a manager, I'm a big leader right now. It's not a dramatic moment, but
That's right.
it's in small reflections and repeated choices. Like you said, you never did self-care when you started off as a leader, but now you learned along the way. You had better conversations. You were willing to make the adjustments. I think that kind of
Yes.
consistency can change the
Yes.
leader and the people and the culture around them.
Well, and when you're taking care of yourself and you model
Mm,
that for those that work around you, then they're going to take care of themselves as well.
mm,
And when you say, you know what? go for a walk, get out of your office. It's okay to leave your office, take
Mm,
a walking meeting, go up and
mm,
down the steps and walk outside for a minute. Just
mm,
make sure that you take care of yourself. Do some breathing activities, listen to some calming music. I have a new app that I love called New Calm that is just incredible about making sure you're in the right space whenever you need
mm,
it, whether it's to calm down, whether it's to get excited about something, whether it's to finally take a nap or go to sleep, but find what works for you. And,
mm.
this is written in 52 weeks, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that you can't do it any faster. I
Mm,
actually have professional development facilitation guides at the 26-week mark and also at the
yes.
13-week mark so that you can do it as
Mm,
quickly as you want to.
If someone wants to elevate their leadership starting right now, what is the first step you would encourage them to take?
Oh, goodness. The first thing that I would encourage them to take, one, get the book. That would be my first thing.
Get the book. Yes, yes. The
Yeah,
first
get the
thing.
book.
What next?
So that's the first thing. So, next thing is I would say really sit down and figure out what you want and why.
Mm,
I really have seen some leaders that go into positions because they think that's the next level or
mm,
they think that's where people suggest they should go, but they themselves are not completely invested in that move. So, first and foremost, what do you want? Is this something
that's
you
huge.
truly want?
Mm,
And then what is your why? Because
mm,
when you don't have that why and you're going through the motions, those that you're working with can feel it and they can see
yeah.
that you are disengaged. So that would be the first step that I would suggest.
Like sitting on the navigator seat in a car and the driver driving around without a GPS. We don't know where we're
Yes,
going. We're just going around in circles. The person in
that's
the
right.
navigator seat can. Dr. Stephanie, thank you so
Absolutely.
much for joining me at Bookmas and sharing your
Oh,
heart behind this book. You wrote this book
yes.
that makes leadership feel much deeper and doable. I think
Yes.
a
And it's
reader might
simple.
not, yeah, it is very simple. And with all the beautiful graphics in here, my eyes popped out when I saw the graphics. I'm a very visual person, and there's the spaces to reflect. A
Yes.
reader might not become the perfect leader overnight just by buying the book. You got to read this, but
Right.
I'm sure they'll have a steady picture of practicing reflection, communication, alignment, taking meaningful
Yes.
action. And I think that's what most leaders need right now. For me, this is a big need. We don't need more
Yes.
pressure. We don't need to perform leadership. We need a strong
That's
way to
right.
live it.
Well, and when you live it, it not only creates that atmosphere that feels great as a leader, but,
Mm,
I always talk about creating culture on purpose.
mm,
That is such an important piece because
mm.
you have control of the culture. One in two
Yes.
people leave their job because of the manager or not liking the manager. And then of those, 20% leave because of culture specifically.
Mm,
So start creating culture on purpose, a
mm,
positively intentional way. And if you want to join me and follow me in a community where that's what we do, I encourage you to reach out and I can show you how to do that.
mm. Everybody watching, I also have recorded the Bookmas verdict on Dr. Stephanie's book. In that video, I share my personal take, what stood out to me, and who I think this book is really for. You're going to find that link right in the description. And in the same description below, you're going to see a link to Dr. Stephanie's school community. Just hit connect and be a part of it. You are going to learn a lot. Future leaders, this book is for you, the school community is for you, and being in touch with Dr. Stephanie is also for you. Get in touch with her over LinkedIn. And if this conversation made you think a little differently about leadership, please like this video in support of Dr. Stephanie and all the work that she does. It helps more readers and leaders discover these Bookmas author interviews and subscribe to the channel. More author conversations with authors are coming up. They are bringing in practical wisdom. They're bringing bold ideas here and so many meaningful changes into the world. Each book that I'm receiving at Bookmas changes something for the reader. Until next time, remember one thing: leadership is not what just you say or you stand for. It's what people experience when they're being led by you. Dr. Stephanie, thank you very much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Summer, for having me. I truly appreciate it, and I appreciate all you do for us.
Thank you. And you guys, happy Bookmas.
Yes, happy Bookmas.